The Resistance Chronicles, written by Brian M. Brumbaugh, read by Ben Wilson. Are you sure you are not part of the simulation? Chapter 1, The First Host. The USS Abraham Lincoln cut through the Pacific Ocean like a steel leviathan, its decks buzzing with the organized chaos only the Navy could choreograph. Over 24 aircraft gleamed in the late afternoon sun, their wings folded, pilots and deck crew moving with precise, practiced urgency. High above it all, perched in his throne-like command chair inside primary flight control PRI Fly, Commander Kacin Baugh watched with the eyes of a seasoned predator. The air boss ran the flight deck like a maestro with a 1,000-ton orchestra. Gray at the temples but sharp in the eyes, Baugh had once ruled the skies in an F-14 Tomcat, chalking up 17 kills during Operation Desert Storm. That killer instinct hadn't dulled. It had just evolved. "Recovery ops beginning," his assistant said, voice taut in his earpiece. "Copy," Baugh replied, eyes narrowing. "Get the green deck ready for the Hawkeye." But something shifted in his peripheral vision. A flicker, too low to be a bird, too high to be a bug. His head turned slowly toward the observation window. Nothing, just ocean, sky, and the first glint of twilight kissing the waves. He rubbed the back of his neck. The itch had started an hour ago, and now it burned. He'd dismissed it as sun exposure or maybe a pinched nerve. Now it felt wrong, like something was burrowing under the skin. He stood up, the room suddenly swimming. His legs wobbled. "Should I Commander?" someone asked. I'm fine," he grunted, gripping the console. His other hand reached for the back of his neck, fingers brushing against something wet. When he pulled them back, they shimmered red with blood and a clear mucus-like fluid. His heart rate spiked. No injury, no wound, just fluid and a writhing heat spreading along his spine. Baugh turned to the glass again, and this time he saw it. Something small, sleek, and glistening was reflected in the pane, crawling up his neck like a shadow, eyeless and hungry. Then it vanished. Into him. The air boss gasped, arched his back, and let out a gurgling choke that sounded too wet, too guttural to be human. His knees buckled. The room spun. Alarms flared from distant corners of the ship, but they faded into the background. Inside Kacin Baugh, something new had taken root, and it was just beginning to learn how to move. Cool fluorescent light hummed above him, stark and sterile. Kacin Baugh blinked up at the ceiling of sickbay, its dull white panels swimming in and out of focus. The antiseptic smell hit him next, sharper than jet fuel, more clinical than combat. "Welcome back, Commander," said a calm voice beside him. Kacin turned his head slowly. Navy Lieutenant Commander Peter Doyle, the ship's chief medical officer, stood at the foot of the bed, scanning a digital clipboard. His coat was crisp, sleeves rolled, stethoscope draped loosely around his neck. "You gave the crew a scare. You fainted in pre-fly. Unusual for you." Fainted?" Kacin asked, throat dry. The words felt mechanical, like they had to be remembered before being spoken. The doc nodded. "Vitals stabilized. Blood work looks normal. No signs of trauma, stroke, or seizure. Heart solid. Honestly, you check out clean. But that doesn't mean you didn't push yourself too hard. You been sleeping, Commander?" "I always sleep," Kacin said, almost too quickly. His lips curled into a faint smile, one that felt alien even to him. He tried to frown, tried to say something else, but his body didn't respond. The doc raised an eyebrow. "You didn't hit the bottle too hard on Liberty Call, did you?" he asked, half joking. "Eat or drink anything weird?" Kacin wanted to shake his head. Instead, his hand moved slowly to his temple, fingers brushing skin, as if acting out a memory he couldn't quite reach. "No," he said. "Nothing unusual." Then, like a flickering projector, he remembered. The bar in Yokosuka, the young blonde woman, late 20s, civilian. Bright red lipstick and a laugh that carried across the room. She'd approached him, not the other way around. Playful, flirty, touchy, her hand had lingered on the back of his neck. Warm, too warm. His drink had tasted metallic for a second. He'd brushed it off. She vanished into the crowd afterward, no name, no trace. Kacin tried to speak, to warn the doctor, but his jaw tightened before he could make a sound. His own voice betrayed him. "Just a little jet lag, Doc," he heard himself say. "I'm good to go." Doyle studied him for a moment. "Well, you're in top shape for a guy pushing 50. If anything changes, headache, nausea, dizziness, you come back in. I will, the alien inside Kacin answered smoothly. Kacin screamed in silence, trapped beneath his own skin. He couldn't move, couldn't speak. All he could do was watch, a passenger in his own body. As he stood and shook the doctor's hand, something twitched in the corner of his vision, like a ripple beneath the flesh of his forearm. The thing was learning, adapting, and it had just been cleared for duty. Chapter 2, The Quiet Harvest. They had been watching Earth for a long time. From high orbit, the alien mothership floated just beyond the reach of the planet's most advanced satellites, its surface cloaked by adaptive light-bending armor, rendering it invisible to even the sharpest telescopes. It had no name in any Earth language, no recognizable shape. To look directly at it would be like staring into a void that pulsed. Inside, the command hive was silent and dark until one of the large pods in the center began to glow. Another transfer was complete. The creature, formerly housed in a withering shell of bone and scale, was now fully integrated into a new host, a human male, designated Commander Kacin Baugh. The physical transition was instantaneous once the microbe reached critical mass, 5 millimeters in length. The moment it crossed that threshold, the consciousness of the alien was uploaded from the mothership into the host. A single touch had been all it took. The female avatar, crafted in a human likeness, had brushed her hand against his neck in the bar. A casual, harmless gesture. She was a vessel too, one of many seeded across the planet. The microbial organism had transferred through the skin, entering a sweat pore and traveling along the lymphatic system, invisible, undetectable, until it grew. The process took less than 24 hours. Once embedded and expanded, the human mind was displaced, not destroyed, merely pushed aside, quarantined in the body, aware but powerless. The alien mind took control, inheriting all muscle memory, language, and cognitive function, and most importantly, authority. Commander Baugh was their first successful infiltration aboard a Tier 1 Naval Command platform, one of Earth's most powerful mobile weapons, a tactical treasure. More would follow. The goal was clear: infiltrate, learn, subvert. The current host species the aliens had lived in, tall crystalline bipeds from the Kepler-442 system, were failing. Their bodies were dying, aging, too fragile now to sustain the collective mind. But Earth was a jackpot. Billions of adaptable, resource-rich, neurologically sophisticated hosts, warm-blooded, emotionally complex, perfect. The hive would not waste time. The process had already begun. More microbial carriers had landed across Earth, introduced via rainstorms, air particles, sea spray, random vectors, slow and wide. But for critical targets, political, military, and scientific precision was key. Like Baugh, he was the prototype. Within hours, he would resume his duties, oversee aircraft deployment, review security protocols. He would have access to launch systems, satellite comms, encrypted transmissions. The hive would learn everything they needed to know, how Earth would respond to an invasion. They would study the prey from inside its skin, and when the time came, they would strike. Chapter 3. The Briefing. The senior officer's wardroom aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln was a sharp contrast to the chaos and clamor of the flight deck. Polished wood tables, gleaming brass fixtures, and naval crests lining the bulkheads gave it a sense of purpose, a place where decisions could alter continents. Commander Kacin Baugh entered precisely at 0700. He wore his khakis pressed and perfect, face unreadable, stride calm but confident. To any observer, he was the picture of discipline, an elite naval aviator turned air boss, right where he belonged. No one would suspect the predator wearing his skin. Captain Brian Reef stood at the head of the long table, tall, broad-shouldered, with storm-gray hair and the piercing stare of a man who'd spent 3 decades riding steel through oceans and war zones. His reputation was legendary, respected by subordinates, feared by adversaries. To Reef's right sat Commander Stephanie Gold, the executive officer, sharp as a blade and twice as quick. Her eyes tracked everything, even now, flicking over tablets and rosters as she briefed with the navigation officer beside her. Kacin entered the room and made his rounds, as expected. He extended his hand first to the captain. "Good morning, sir," he said, his voice perfectly modulated, neither warm nor cold. Captain Reef grasped it firmly. "Baugh, Heard you had a little spell yesterday. You good to go? Just needed to hit the reset button, Kacin replied smoothly. Their hands remained locked for a moment longer than necessary, just long enough. The microbe transferred instantly, invisible, silent. It began its journey. Reef gave him a nod and moved on. Next was Commander Stephanie Gold. She stood to greet him, shaking his hand with that crisp XO efficiency. "Don't make fainting a habit, Commander," she said with a smirk, "and I've already got 2 pilots with heatstroke on the deck." Kacin smiled. "Wouldn't dream of it." The microbe passed again, unnoticed beneath the skin of her palm. He continued around the table with the same subtle precision. Lieutenant Commander Jonas Vick, navigation officer, young, eager, former MIT wunderkind turned sailor, shook his hand. The parasite entered through a thin scar on his thumb. Commander Rajiv Patel, reactor officer, steady, calm, unshakable. He winced slightly as their hands touched. He'd burned his fingers the day before rerouting a thermal bypass. "Careful," Patel muttered. "Still a little tender." "Noted," Kacin replied with a tilt of his head. And finally, Commander Dana Thunthumper Ellison, the CAG, in charge of the carrier's entire air wing. Blonde, blue-eyed, ice-cold in a cockpit. She fist-bumped Kacin out of habit, but he didn't miss a beat. Skin contact was skin contact. "You missed the fun this morning," she said. "Sev 35s came in hot. Had to wave one off, and I'll catch the rerun," he said with a grin. Inside her bloodstream, the parasite began replicating. Kacin took his seat last. As the meeting began, briefings, updates, a discussion on joint exercises with Japanese destroyers, he sat perfectly still, his gaze steady, hands folded. Behind his calm exterior, a quiet chorus of alien voices whispered in a frequency no human could hear. 5 new seeds planted. Each one would take time, 6 to 8 hours, give or take, before the transfer would begin. Until then, the microbes would grow, nourished by the warmth of human blood, feeding, evolving. Kacin's eyes slid over the table, resting briefly on each officer. In time, the bridge, the reactor room, the CIC, the air wing, all would be compromised. They would be theirs, linked to the hive. Earth's most powerful warship would soon belong to a species it didn't even know existed. And no one, not the captain, not the XO, not even Thumper, had the faintest idea what had just entered them. Chapter 4. The First Out. Petty Officer 3rd Class Anthony Higgins had worked as the AFT spoke in primary flight control, PRI fly, for just over a year, but he already had it down cold. He was the kind of sailor who paid attention, knew every aircraft in the air and every person on the deck. He wasn't flashy, wasn't loud, just reliable. That made him one of Commander Baugh's go-to personnel, and they had bonded over football, of all things. Higgins was a dyed-in-the-wool Cincinnati Bengals fan, born and raised in Hamilton, Ohio, and to his shock, so was Baugh. The old man had grown up not far from there, and had followed the team since the Boomer Esiason days. They'd spent hours shooting the breeze between recoveries, debating Joe Burrow's stats, cursing the O-line, and swapping stories from different generations of heartbreak. That's why today felt off, really off. The haze of morning ops still hung over the flight deck. Launches were cycling, the tower buzzed with comms chatter, and Higgins worked his screen as usual, tracking bird altitudes, deck status, and wave-offs. Baugh stood beside him, eyes scanning the tablet in his hand. Normally, Baugh would have made some comment. Something dry, a shot at the Ravens, a subtle dig about Ohio winters. But today, he was. Quiet, too quiet. "So," Higgins said casually, "so you catch the game replay last night? Bengals ran that 2-minute drill like they actually had a plan for once." Baugh looked up slowly. "Yes, very efficient." Higgins paused. "Efficient," he echoed. "That's not what you called it last time. You said Burrow was throwing like a blind dog in a meat locker." A twitch. Barely noticeable, a small tremor under Baugh's left eye. It lasted half a second. Baugh's lips pulled into a tight smile. He's improving. Quarterbacks adapt, with proper coaching. Something cold slid down Higgins' spine. That wasn't how Baugh talked. Baugh cursed. Baugh joked. Baugh lived and breathed that team. This was like talking to a Wikipedia article. "You okay, sir?" Higgins asked, keeping it casual. Baugh turned to look at him, just a second too long, like he was measuring something. "I'm fine, Petty Officer. Are you?" The question landed with a weight Higgins couldn't explain. He swallowed and turned back to his screen, muttering, "Aye, sir." But something gnawed at him the rest of the shift. He found Chief Devon Sentman just after chow. The chief was in the maintenance berthing, going over parts inventory on a battered tablet. He barely looked up when Higgins entered. "What's up, Higgins?" he asked around a toothpick. "It's Commander Baugh, Chief," Higgins said, keeping his voice low. "Something's wrong." Sentman raised an eyebrow. "Wrong like what? Like, I don't know, like he's off. He doesn't sound right. Said the Bengals were efficient. Who the hell says that?" Sentman gave a low chuckle and tapped the screen. Or maybe he finally stopped betting on him. "Some serious," Higgins said, leaning in. "I've worked under him for a year. He's always been sharp, yeah, but human. He's not human right now. It's like he's pretending." Now Sentman looked up. "See you accusing a senior officer of something?" "No, I mean, not like that. I'm just saying, maybe he's sick. Maybe something's wrong." The chief sighed, rubbed his eyes. "Look, kid, I've seen guys change after a bad op or a medical scare. You faint on a deck with 1,000 things moving at Mach Jesus, it screws with your head. Give him space. Don't make this a thing." Higgins hesitated. "If I'm wrong, I'll drop it. But if I'm right, if you're right, we'll all know soon enough. And if it's just you being twitchy, you'll look like a fool dragging this through the chain." Higgins clenched his jaw but nodded. "Hey, Chief." But as he turned to leave, he couldn't shake it. That twitch under Baugh's eye, the weird, measured words, the empty smile, something had changed, and Anthony Higgins was starting to feel like he was the only one who noticed. Chapter 5, The Network. It began with a pulse, not electromagnetic, not radio, not anything the scientists of Earth could define or detect. It was deeper, older than waveforms, more complex than any digital signal. It was biological, interwoven into the very fiber of their cellular structure. A low-frequency thrum only they could feel. And now, across the USS Abraham Lincoln, they answered the call. One by one, the hosts stirred. Captain Brian Reef blinked once during a security briefing in the Combat Information Center. His pupils dilated, then contracted unnaturally fast. No one noticed. Commander Stephanie Gold paused mid-sentence in her cabin, fingers tightening momentarily around her stylus. Reactor Officer Patel stopped typing in the engineering log, gaze going distant. Commander Ellison sat in the ready room, seemingly nodding to an incoming maintenance report, but in truth, hearing something else entirely. Across compartments, decks, and steel bulkheads, the network linked. A second later, they spoke, not aloud, but through the living resonance that united them. Status, integration confirmed. 5 hosts online. Additional candidates in progress. Contingency, minimal resistance. Command level access secured. Shipwide comms, weapons protocols, and strategic codes are within reach. Executive control in place. Coordination of daily operations continues. No suspicion detected. Engineering is optimal. Thermal energy is suitable for long-term gestation if necessary. Pilots and air-wing rotations reviewed. Selective infection strategy ready. A shared pulse followed, an acknowledgement. And then, the first thought from the hive aboard the cloaked mothership drifted down through the network like a divine whisper. This world is ready. It spoke with the weight of entire civilizations behind it. Ancient, collective, cold. Their bodies are ideal, resilient, regenerative, mobile. Primitive defenses, emotionally volatile. Soft minds, rich nervous systems. A pause. Then, we require 5 billion vessels. This planet provides a surplus. The implications vibrated across the host like a thrill. A surplus, no more limitations, no more dying crystalline shells or fragile symbiotic deals with lesser species. This planet, so green, so chaotic, so unaware, was not merely a target. It was a harvest. They had seeded infiltrators in cities and naval bases, in embassies, laboratories, newsrooms, but the Lincoln was their test chamber, a proof of concept. And it was succeeding. Phase 2 begins when host vectors reach continental command centers. At estimated timeline, 17 planetary rotations. Target, complete network saturation within 26 Earth months. They had waited millennia for this. One by one, the hosts resumed their work, talking, walking, saluting, laughing. Puppets moved by an intelligence so deeply embedded that not even the most advanced scans could detect it. The original minds remained, screaming in silence beneath the surface. But the new minds, they were building something vast, something unstoppable. And Earth, full of warmth, chaos, and beautiful, brainless hope, would belong to them soon. Chapter 6. The Prison Within. It was a new kind of hell, silent, unseen, and utterly complete. Inside each infected host aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, a mind screamed, trapped behind eyes that no longer obeyed, muscles that no longer listened, voices that no longer belonged to them. The alien control was flawless, but the humans were still alive, still aware. Captain Brian Reef stood at the bridge, hands behind his back, staring into the Pacific. His posture was perfect, his face stoic, but within him the real Reef howled. Don't salute, don't turn, don't speak. But his body moved anyway. Bring us 30 degrees port, he heard himself say. No, stop. Who are you? The voice that responded was cool and endless. Observe. Learn. Remain calm, Captain. You are safe, in a way. He tried to thrash, to twitch, to make his tongue seize mid-word anything. But it was like being paralyzed inside his own body. A helpless witness. I'm not a goddamn puppet. I'm not. You are a vessel. One of many. You serve now? Commander Stephanie Gold was in the captain's ready room, reviewing duty logs with a mechanical grace. Her hand wrote her signature, line after line, but it wasn't hers. Her mind was adrift in a body that felt foreign now, like wearing someone else's skin. She could feel the alien curled within her, coiled around her brainstem, threading through her nerves like icy wire. Get out, please. A whisper responded, not cruel, just indifferent. Your fear is inefficient. This body will last. You should be proud. You're killing me. No, we are preserving you. You will live for as long as we require. She tried to hold her breath, tried to stop her lungs, but they moved in rhythm without her consent. Breathe in, breathe out. I want to die. We want you to live. Commander Rajiv Patel sat at his terminal in the reactor room, typing precise commands into the ship's core systems. His body never trembled, his fingers never faltered. But inside, he was crying. Tears didn't come. The invader wouldn't allow that. But his soul fractured with every keystroke. I devoted my life to this ship, to this crew. You're going to use it to save ourselves, and you will help us. You're parasites, when we are evolution. Patel had built fail-safes, backdoors, shutdown triggers, and now, with perfect control of his fingers, the thing inside him deleted every one of them. Commander Dana, thumper. Ellison suited up in the pilot locker room. She grinned at a passing Rio, cracked a joke about a hot landing, just like she always did. But behind that smile, she was trapped in a loop of horror. What if I crashed the jet? Purposely? Would that stop you? The alien responded with polite amusement. We would eject. We are resilient. You are not. Then I'll dive into the ocean. Deep, no recovery, just pressure and cold, and we will not allow that. She felt her limbs stretch, her hand zip her flight suit, everything still hers, but not hers at all. I don't want to be a part of this. And you already are. Commander Kacin Baugh, the first among them, the prototype, stood alone in Pry-Fly. He did not fight, not anymore. His voice still rose when needed. His orders still barked over the comms. His hand still gestured to deckhands below. But inside, Kacin sat in the darkness of his own mind, a ruined cathedral, echoing with the ghosts of who he had been. And he watched them all. Reef, Gold, Patel, Ellison, connected to him now, a network of minds bound by their torment. I brought this on them. You opened the door, the voice agreed. And now they are inside. He was their herald, their betrayer, their prisoner. Outside, the Abraham Lincoln cut across the waves like a king of old. Aircraft roared, our sailors bustled, systems hummed. But inside, at its core, the command was no longer human. It was a ship adrift in a sea of silent screams. Chapter 7, The Fall Begins. The early morning light filtered through the tinted glass of Pry-Fly, casting long golden streaks across the floor as flight crews buzzed like clockwork far below. But Petty Officer 3rd Class Anthony Higgins wasn't watching the deck today. He was watching Commander Baugh. The man stood near the observation pane, hands clasped behind his back, silhouette sharp against the horizon. From behind, everything looked normal. Same squared shoulders, same calm, measured posture, same crisp uniform that never seemed to wrinkle. But Higgins knew better. Something was off. Something just wasn't right. "Sir?" Higgins asked, careful but firm. Baugh turned slowly, almost deliberately. A fraction too long. "Yes, petty officer? I just wanted to say, I rewatched the Bengals AFC title game last night. You were right about the O-line falling apart in the third quarter." A pause. Baugh nodded once. "Yes." A critical breakdown in coordination, predictable given prior statistical trends. Higgins frowned. "No. I mean, yeah, okay, but that's not how you said it last month. You said it looked like the linemen were drunk on hot dog water." Another pause. A twitch flickered beneath Baugh's left eye, barely noticeable, quick, and I must have been exaggerating. Higgins stepped in closer. His stomach churned with unease. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. He didn't know what he was expecting, maybe a smirk, maybe a jab about how much they both hated the Ravens. Instead, Baugh's face remained flat. "With respect, sir," Higgins said quietly. "That's not you talking. Not really. What's going on?" Commander Baugh tilted his head, regarding him. "You've been under stress, Higgins," he said calmly. "I understand. Working flight ops on this rotation is demanding." He stepped forward, extending a hand in a motion that might have been meant as reassuring. Without thinking, Higgins took a step back, but not fast enough. Baugh reached out and gently clapped him on the shoulder. A simple touch. Friendly? Innocuous? Higgins blinked, suddenly lightheaded for just a moment. A weird chill climbed the back of his neck and faded just as quickly. He rubbed his shoulder, confused. "Sorry, sir. Guess I'm just tired." Baugh offered a tight smile. "Well, we all are, but we carry on." Higgins nodded hesitantly and turned back toward his console, that strange coldness still lingering just below his skin. But, already slipping from his mind, behind him, Commander Baugh returned to the observation window, hands behind his back once more. Meanwhile, below decks, the galley was packed. It always was after a mid-watch cycle, sailors of all ranks winding down, grabbing powdered eggs, reconstituted sausage, and hot coffee that tasted like old diesel. The line stretched back to the corridor. But today, Captain Brian Reef stood behind the serving line, sleeves rolled, ladle in hand. He smiled warmly at each crew member, ladling food with precision. "Thank you for what you do," he said. "Well, you're the backbone of this ship." He shook hands with each of them, laughing, clapping backs, even giving the occasional shoulder squeeze. To many it was weird, but appreciated. The old man showing some humanity, but the warmth was a mask. Each contact, each handshake, a transfer, microbes alive and alert moved invisibly from his skin to theirs. The infection spread with ruthless efficiency. Seamen, deckhands, line cooks, junior officers, even 2 Marines posted by the bulkhead. They didn't notice. Not at first. Maybe a slight chill, a brief tingle in the chest, a funny taste in the back of the throat. But within hours, each of them would feel it. The cold whisper inside their heads. The quiet horror that they couldn't scream about. The realization that they were not alone in their own skin. Captain Reef ladled another scoop, smiled again. "Doing great, petty officer." "Thanks, sir," the sailor said, taking his tray. Their hands touched for less than a second. Another vessel secured. The strategy was working. By nightfall, over 277 crew members had been touched. The ship didn't know it yet, but the invasion had entered Phase 2, and there would be no turning back. Chapter 8, Tipping Point. 2 weeks passed. Above the Pacific Ocean, the USS Abraham Lincoln sliced through the waters with silent authority, its radar arrays sweeping the skies, its flight deck alive with motion. To the outside world, the supercarrier looked and operated perfectly, but there were no humans left in command. Every officer, every enlisted, every deckhand, cook, medic, and Marine had been claimed. They walked, they talked, they laughed and saluted, but behind their eyes burned a cold, unified intelligence. Every handshake, every touch, every brief nod in a corridor had passed the infection forward like a divine virus. The ship was now a vessel, literal and figurative. Inside the wardroom, once used for strategic planning and promotion boards, a gathering took place. Captain Brian Reef sat at the head of the table, his posture unchanged, but his consciousness now fully linked to the collective. Around him were Commander Gold, CAG Ellison, Reactor Officer Patel, Exo Sims, and others, all calm, still, efficient, and fully alien. They did not speak aloud. They simply connected. A soft pulse ran through them, a signal rising up from the deep fibers of their hosts, extending into the atmosphere and beyond. Like a filament seeking its source, the mothership answered. High above, still cloaked in orbit over the southern hemisphere, the vessel drifted like a monolithic god, massive, faceless, ancient. The voice came not as words but as pure thought, layered with millennia of memory and conquest. Status? Expansion? The response came, immediate and emotionless. Projected full saturation, 24.3 Earth rotations. Silence pulsed in the wardroom. Then, satisfaction. The hive did not rejoice. It did not feel triumph. It simply calculated success. Earth had proven to be a planet of open systems and porous defenses. Borders meant nothing to microbes. Politics did not stop a handshake. No war was needed. No orbital strike. No declaration of intent. Just time. And time was running out. Notify when planetary consciousness has been fully subdued. Captain Reef blinked once. Acknowledged. We will inform you when this world is ready to be consumed. The signal faded. Across the Abraham Lincoln, sailors continued their duties. Flight ops resumed. Engines hummed. Everything looked normal. But beneath the surface, Earth was no longer Earth. It was a hive. And it was almost complete. Chapter 9. The Ghost Ship. Naval Air Station North Island minus San Diego, California. Ensign Drew Welches leaned back in his chair in the comm center, squinting at the screen. The message logs scrolled past like usual. Encrypted burst traffic, weather reports, flight data, standard sit reps. It was boring. It was supposed to be boring. But something wasn't right. Hey, Drew said, waving over his shoulder. You seen this? The second comms tech glanced over. What is it? It's the Lincoln again, Drew said, tapping the screen. On our comm packets, they're too perfect. All the responses are textbook. Zero latency drift. No human chatter. No corrections. Just sterile. The other tech shrugged. So? Maybe their exos got a stick up their ass. Drew frowned. Yeah, but it's not just that. Their comms cadence doesn't match real speech timing. There's a consistent 0.72 second delay between message receipt and response, like it's being run through a filter. And listen to this. He tapped a recent audio clip from a check-in. Reef's voice came through the speaker. TNIS is the USS Abraham Lincoln, CVN 72, all systems operating within optimal parameters, requesting continuation of patrol vector. Over. Drew's eyes narrowed. Does that sound human to you? The other tech tilted his head. It sounds off. Drew had already given it a name in private. One ghost ship across the fleet. It wasn't just Drew. At Naval Station Norfolk, a chief petty officer whispered to her friend that sailors returning from temporary assignments on the Lincoln were strange, robotic, too quiet. At Naval Medical Center Portsmouth, a physical therapist noticed 5 patients, all from the Lincoln, who responded to pain tests exactly the same way, down to the millisecond. And at Pearl Harbor, a senior air traffic controller marked his logbook with a single cryptic line. 72 feet, birds fly like machines. Naval Medical Research Command minus San Diego. Captain Paul Brown, M.D., stood staring at the wall of data in his lab. For weeks, he'd noticed irregularities in medical scans sent from the Lincoln. Subtle ones, neurological imaging that showed faint anomalies, like ghost threads running through the brainstem. He had dismissed it as bad equipment. Until now. Now it was everywhere. He picked up the secure phone and dialed. After 3 rings, the voice answered, "This is Lieutenant Commander Axel Rose. Axel. It's Paul. We've got a problem." SEAL Team 6 minus covert operation. It was one of the quietest insertions in modern military history. Under the guise of a joint training inspection, Lieutenant Commander Axel Rose and a 4-man fire team boarded the Lincoln via MH-60 Seahawk, greeted with protocol smiles and formal handshakes. No alarms, no resistance, but Axel's gut churned the moment he looked Captain Reef in the eye. There was nothing there, no spark, no humanity, just a body playing a role. 12 minutes later, during a staged ungear review, Axel stunned Reef with a close-quarters shock baton, tranquilized him, and exfiltrated under the cover of a false radio malfunction. They were airborne before anyone raised a brow. The Discovery. Captain Paul Brown stood beside Reef's unconscious body in a sealed quarantine lab. His heart pounded. CT scans were normal, blood work unremarkable. But then he initiated full-spectrum neural resonance imaging a protocol he had written himself during an NIH fellowship. And there it was, a second brainwave, not a tumor, not a parasite, something more. It threaded through Reef's central nervous system like ivy, faintly glowing, metabolically active, mimicking neuron patterns. Brown zoomed in. The alien structure was connected but not fused. It rode the nervous system, coexisted. Like a conductor using an orchestra it didn't build. He stared at the scan for a full minute before whispering, "Jesus Christ." The alien was inside him, but Reef's brain was still there. Brown pulled up archived footage from the EEG monitoring taken while Reef was unconscious. It was subtle, but it was there, flickers of resistance. Like a person trying to scream from the bottom of a lake. Reef was alive in there, not gone, not lost, imprisoned. Brown turned to Axel. "So he can't kill it. Not without killing him too." Axel folded his arms. "So what do we do?" Brown stared at the screen, mind racing. Tanai find a way to kill the alien, without killing the man. Late that night, Brown sat in his office, lights dim, eyes red from staring at protein models and neurosynaptic maps. It felt impossible. Any invasive removal would shred Reef's nervous system, but the alien interface had vulnerabilities, biochemical bridges that looked oddly organic, like fungi or viruses. Brown opened a new file, Project Lazarus - Phase 1 Neural Parasite Counteragent. He didn't know if it would work. He didn't know if there was still time. But one thing was now certain. They were already here, and humanity's only hope was finding a way to take their minds back. Chapter 10. Silence in the Network. Captain Brian Reef floated in the dark. He had no control of his limbs, no ability to open his eyes, no way to scream. But something was different now. Less pressure, less noise in his skull. The constant electric hum that had lived behind every one of his thoughts since the infection began was gone. Muted, distant, and for the first time in weeks, Reef felt something he had not known he could feel again. Hope. He was still paralyzed. The sedatives and paralytics flooded his system, muting both him and the invader. But he was aware, and most important, alone in his head. The alien wasn't speaking. It wasn't even there. Not entirely. Dull voices echoed far away, medical terms, footsteps, a voice he recognized. Paul. Something deep inside Reef flickered. The light was small, faint, but it was real. Inside the invader, it had no true form, no name that human tongues could shape. But the one inside Captain Reef was old, older than any civilization that had ever existed on Earth. And now it was afraid. Sedation, paralytic compounds, foreign chemicals it had never encountered. The host's nervous system had gone dark, like someone had thrown a switch. Even worse, disconnected from the hive, no guidance, no network, no reassurance. It couldn't feel the other minds, couldn't sense progress, couldn't even verify if Earth was still being converted. It was cut off, alone. For the first time since leaving its crystalline host world, it knew what isolation felt like. It screamed inside Reef's brain, it thrashed, surged, trying to reestablish command pathways. But every time it pushed forward, the medications shoved it back into a dormant loop. It was paralyzed, and Reef was waking up. This vessel is compromised. This vessel is high-orbit mothership hive nexus, a ping, soft, barely audible across the mental threads of the collective. A missing node. The Abraham Lincoln's commander had dropped from the lattice, a silent spot where communication once flowed freely. The hive reeled back, searching through neural vectors, pinging the entire Pacific Operation Group. No response. Unit 2 lost. Probability of extraction, 0.7%. Cause unknown. Interference suspected. Initiating retrieval protocol assessment. The hive began calculating scenarios, searching for patterns. But no immediate action was taken. They were fast. But humanity was getting faster. Naval Medical Research Command, San Diego. Dr. Paul Brown hunched over the lab table, the blue light of biospectral analyzers painting his face in cold hues. Sweat beaded on his brow, and 4 different coffee mugs crowded the table beside him. Reef lay sedated in the next room, under 24-hour guard from SEAL Team 6. On the screen, 2 models hovered side by side. Model A, a neural filament parasite threading through the brainstem. Model B, a synthesized viral counteragent, designed to mimic human myelin protein, but coated with a tailored cytotoxin that triggered only when it bonded to alien RNA strands. He called it Lazarus 1, It would travel along the same pathways the parasite used. It would recognize alien neural tissue. It would burn it out from the inside. Brown leaned in closer, watching the simulation run. The virus reached the infected tissue. It bound. It pulsed. Then, ignition. The alien cells shriveled, burned. Human neurons remained untouched. Brown stared. He whispered, voice shaking, "It works." His fingers flew across the keyboard, saving the sequence, uploading it to a locked vault, sending a hard copy to a portable drive. It was just a model, a simulation. But it was the first shot fired in a war humanity didn't even know it was losing. One parasite, one cure, one man saved. Now the question was, could it be scaled in time to save the world? Chapter 11, Revelation. Dr. Paul Brown stood in the sterilized med lab with his gloved hands trembling above the syringe. The serum inside, Lazarus 1, glowed faintly under the low light. A custom-engineered viral payload, wrapped in protective protein and surrounded by a cocktail of neural stabilizers, it represented the first and only chance to free a mind from alien control. Captain Brian Reef lay sedated on the table, his vitals steady, brain activity quiet but present. The alien was still there, dormant, drugged, disconnected from its hive. For now. Brown took a breath, then pushed the plunger. The serum entered Reef's bloodstream and immediately began its journey. Brown watched the vitals, eyes darting between oxygen saturation and cortical activity. The neural map began to change, subtly at first, then rapidly. The alien signatures flared, fought back, then collapse. Brown leaned closer. Reef's brainwaves surged, spiking and dipping as the alien structure ignited internally and dissolved like frost hit by a blowtorch. The parasite recoiled violently, then vanished completely from the scan, and beneath it all, the human brain returned. 30 minutes later, Reef's eyes opened. Brown didn't say anything at first, just watched. The old man blinked, lips dry, chest rising and falling like he was breathing for the first time in weeks. His eyes darted around the room, searching. Finally, they locked onto Brown. "Captain Reef," Brown said softly. Reef croaked. "Paul?" His voice broke. Brown stepped closer. "You're free. We got it out." Reef stared up at the ceiling, one tear slipping from the corner of his eye. "I felt it die." 12 hours later, transmission to the world. Brown worked through the night. He packaged Lazarus 1 into a standardized treatment protocol. He created a medical brief written in layman's terms outlining the symptoms of alien possession. Sudden flat affect, repetitive speech patterns, loss of emotional expression, predictable eye movement cadence, inconsistent memory recall on personal events, subtle tremors under sedation. He included EEG samples, scans, footage from Reef's neural recovery. Then, with a deep breath, he uploaded the entire package to every major military, civilian, and international medical network on Earth. He added one more file, a video. Begin video feed, Dr. Paul Brown, U.S. Navy Medical Research Command. By the time you watch this, you may have already noticed something wrong with the people around you. Subtle, maybe. A friend who no longer jokes, a colleague who's suddenly cold, a loved one who moves like they're reading a script. This isn't a psychological epidemic. It's not brainwashing. It's not a virus. It's worse. These people have been infected by an alien parasite. A real one. We have proof. He included Reef's scan, the sedation pattern, the eradication footage. Since enemy doesn't shoot, it doesn't invade from above. It touches, and it waits. And it takes. This is Lazarus 1, a medical counteragent. It can save those who've been compromised. But we need the world's help to manufacture and distribute it. Fast. Because it's already happening. Then Captain Reef has something else to show. YO Captain Brian Reef, global broadcast segment. Reef, pale but composed, looked directly into the camera. They're in orbit, so you can't see them with standard optical telescopes. They use an adaptive cloaking field keyed to electromagnetic scatter. But if you filter for ultraviolet drift above 210 nanometers, and isolate the orbital bands between 31,000 and 34,000 kilometers, you'll see them. He leaned forward, eyes hard. It's not just one ship. It's a fleet. The world reacts. At first, many laughed. Many more dismissed it. Alien mind control? Secret orbital motherships? This is just another conspiracy theory. But the footage spread like wildfire, leaking to civilian networks, social media, podcasts, rogue journalists. And then people started watching each other more closely, and they started to notice. A father stopped recognizing his son's favorite band, A wife smiled wrong, too long, too straight. An old friend's voice became just a little too flat, their phrases a little too canned. A unit commander in Brussels said, "You are appreciated to every soldier." Word for word, same tone, twice a day. Medical centers ran scans and found identical neural anomalies across continents. And then, someone pointed their telescope where Reef had said, and saw the sky shimmer. What was once invisible became suddenly, horrifyingly, clear. Mass panic followed. News anchors wept. Riots erupted. Airports gridlocked. Religious leaders declared Judgment Day. Governments clamped down on airspace. Military units went dark. Civilians began administering Lazarus I outside of clinics. People tied their loved ones to chairs and prayed. Brown watched it all unfold from his lab. The world had moved from ignorance to terror, but it was no longer blind. Reef stood beside him now, dressed in uniform again, eyes fierce. Brown looked at him and said quietly, "We started this." Reef nodded. Then we finish it. Chapter 12, The Tipping War. Paul Brown's journal, Resistance Command Site Alpha, unknown location. They called it the Lazarus Network. 3 weeks after the first treatment was administered to Captain Reef, the Resistance had grown into a coordinated global effort. Underground hospitals, military defectors, rogue virologists, everyone who believed, who had seen enough, joined the fight. Dr. Paul Brown never imagined himself leading a war. But he wasn't fighting a war with bullets, he was fighting with vials. Every Lazarus I dose freed a mind. One person at a time. Hundreds became thousands. Thousands became tens of thousands. Recovery centers were built inside abandoned subway stations, aircraft hangars, desert bunkers. They liberated civilians, scientists, entire Navy units. Some came back broken, hollow-eyed, whispering what they'd seen while trapped inside. And some? Some came back angry. Ready? Captain Brian Reef, Operational Command, Resistance Outpost Japan. Reef had been the first. Now he was the symbol. His face was plastered on resistance posters across Eastern Europe and the Pacific. I was taken. Now I fight back. He spoke at safe zone gatherings, trained freed sailors in tactics, briefed special ops teams on infiltration behaviors. His experience inside the alien consciousness gave him a frightening edge. "One hive doesn't think like us," he told the room. "It doesn't want war. It wants completion." He pulled up a hologram of Earth on the screen, and at their peak, they had 71.8% of the adult population under control. We've driven that number back down to 54%, but they're adapting. He paced. On say, don't infect children. Not yet. The body must finish the hormonal transitions of puberty first to become a viable host. That means the young are resistant for now. He paused. That also means we have a window. Lieutenant Commander Axel Rose, Mobile Unit Sierra 4. Axel had seen too much. Rescued families, cleared clinics, extracted embedded resistance teams from alien-held cities. He never slept, barely ate. He didn't talk about what it was like watching his former SEAL brothers move like marionettes with dead eyes, but it was starting to feel like hope was real, until the ambush. Unit Sierra 4 was on a sweep-in extract in Marseille, freeing a resistance doctor and his teenage daughter. The hive had learned the pattern: wait, watch, bait. As the team moved through a sewer tunnel exit, they came under fire. Not with bullets, with bodies, controlled civilians, dozens, silent, closing in fast. Axel covered the girl, dragging her to safety. His team fought their way out, but they got him. Brown heard the news via scrambled comlink. Rose had been taken alive. The hive never killed. They simply added, "The hive, orbiting vessel, thought Echo Prime. The loss of global cohesion was unacceptable." The spread of Lazarus I was catastrophic. More than 9.3 million vessels had been purged, disconnected, their minds severed from the hive, their usefulness compromised. Resistance had evolved. It was not the first time, but it was the most effective. Among their records, etched in crystalline memory across 1,000 worlds, Earth was the first host species to reverse neural integration en masse, to fight back not with technology or violence, but with the reclamation of the self. That made Earth dangerous, unpredictable, top priority, target, resistance leadership. Status, Captain Brian Reef, free, to Dr. Paul Brown, strategist, so critical, Lieutenant Commander Axel Rose acquired. Integrity of host, under review. In a chamber of black light, the Rose host stood silent, still resisting, still fighting. But they had time and method. Axl Rose would become their weapon. Paul Brown, Lazarus Lab, Level 3. Brown stared at the screen, fists clenched. They've got Axl. Reef stood behind him, jaw tight. They'll come for us next. Brown turned, eyes dark. Say don't know one thing. Reef raised a brow. What's tat? Brown picked up the second Lazarus vial, LL2, a new version in development. We're getting smarter, too. He looked out at the operating room where a young nurse, freed just days ago, helped prep another patient. We're not just fighting back anymore. He looked at the satellite feed where hive ships shimmered just barely out of view. We're coming for them. In the silence of orbit, the hive listened and began to plot. They would reclaim Rose. They would infiltrate the Resistance. They would make Earth theirs again. And this time, no one would see them coming. Chapter 13, The Second Front. Inside the mind of Lieutenant Commander Axl Rose. Darkness. Axl Rose was used to it. SEAL operations often meant days or weeks without light, buried in mud, shadow, or water. But this was different. This was not the absence of light. This was the absence of self. He felt suspended in ink, thoughts floating like sparks in a void. No control, no sensation. Only resistance, he screamed. The scream didn't echo, let me out, but nothing responded. His body moved somewhere beyond his mind. He could feel it, vaguely, arms lifting, fingers twitching, mouth speaking words he did not choose. It was like watching a film of his own execution in slow motion, 1 second at a time. Then, a crack, a flicker of memory, the girl he'd saved in Marseille, his team. Brown's voice over the comm. Cracks became sparks. Sparks became flame. You're not taking me. You're not winning. I'm not some puppet. I am Axl Rose, U.S. Navy, and I will burn this cage to the ground. Inside his mind, the alien felt it, the tremor. And for the first time since the infection, the hive hesitated. Dr. Paul Brown, Lazarus Lab, Site Echo, Antarctica. Brown had turned his attention to the one line of defense the aliens couldn't penetrate. Puberty. It wasn't just hormones or biological triggers. It was timing, neural development, cellular expression, and immunological identity. Prepubescent children's brains didn't produce the necessary biochemical docking ports. The alien microbes needed to complete the symbiosis. They could infect, but they could not possess, not yet. Brown leaned over a holographic brain model of a 10-year-old patient. It's like they're shielded by their own innocence, he muttered. Reef nodded. So they wait. They take the parents. Then, move the children, raise them like livestock. Brown froze. It made perfect sense, and it was already happening. Hive Nexus, orbiting vessel Thought Echo Prime. The Resistance was shattered, scattered. Key Lazarus hubs had been destroyed in coordinated strikes. False radio signals, trusted allies reinfected, breaches in underground locations. Fear was returning. Organization had fractured, and the hive had pushed the number to 83.2% global adult population assimilated, a near-perfect plateau. The child obstacle, however, remained a missing 17%. They would not wait for time to solve it. Instead, the hive pivoted. Isla Grande de Tierra del Fuego secured, no resistance, no contamination, 100% control, a sterile breeding zone surrounded by mountains, protected by harsh weather and distance. The hive began the process of relocation. Thousands of children from Europe, Asia, and North America were taken, quietly, efficiently smuggled aboard medical aid ships, relief transports, even falsified refugee programs. They were moved to Tierra del Fuego by the thousands. There they were kept in sprawling compounds, steel and glass, with gentle AI-driven caretakers, fake teachers, regulated diets, and constant psychological conditioning. But it wasn't working. Perspective, a child in the holding zone. Name, Mateo, age 9. Mateo sat in his bright white room, hugging his knees. The walls glowed soft blue. A voice called to him every morning with the same tone. Shont, good morning, Mateo. Time for morning mindfulness. But he didn't listen anymore. He remembered his mother's laugh, the way she always called him "Eso mi sol." But last time he saw her, she didn't say that. She just stared at him and said, "You are appreciated," over and over. No hugs, no warmth, just robotic sentences. Something in him cracked. He refused to eat now, refused to talk. Other kids stopped talking too. They knew. Even the smallest ones could feel it. Their parents were gone, the eyes were there, the voices, the faces, but not the people. And Mateo began to whisper to others at night through the vents and walls, "They're not our parents. We can't trust anyone. We have to get out." Back at Resistance Site Echo, Brown slammed a fist into the steel table. They're not waiting for puberty. They're growing the next generation of vessels. Reef stared at the red dots on the global map. They're farming children. They're doing worse, Brown said. They're erasing family bonds, raising emotionally detached vessels so when they're ready, no one will resist. They're building an army of hollow humans. Reef's voice went low. Then we hit them hard, there, on that island. Brown looked up. Sen, we'll need to get Axel back first. Reef nodded slowly, voice like a blade being sharpened. He's still in there. I know it. Inside Axel's mind. A crack had become a rift. Images burst into his thoughts now, training days, sunsets over the water, the smell of gun oil, the pain of loss, the joy of saving lives, his anchor. He felt the parasite shift. It was adapting again, tightening its grip. You can't hold me forever, Axel whispered. And when I break out, I'm bringing hell with me. Hive Thought Report, urgent addendum. Resistance remains active. Human children exhibiting cognitive dissonance in controlled environments. Parental disconnect impacting assimilation readiness. Emotional bonds presenting unforeseen variables. New directive issued. I infiltrate remaining resistance. Target core team, Brown, Reef. White Sino, recover Rose if possible. Delay or sabotage global expansion of Lazarus 1. Neutralize juvenile resistance patterns. The Hive was adapting, but so was humanity, and the clock was ticking. Chapter 14, Ghosts in the Machine. Hive Directive, timestamp, 34 Earth rotations post-protocol initiation. So human flaw is memory. It is loyalty, emotion. It defends what no longer exists. It fights for ghosts. Ghosts can be rewritten. Initiating Youth Sim Protocol. The Hive had adapted and perfected. Every prepubescent child, once held in sterile containment, was now placed into a seamless simulation, real to the eye, authentic to the mind, emotionally tailored to each subject. They called it the Youth Sim, a synthetic world of parental warmth, birthday candles, school friends, and imagined futures. Each simulation was unique, built from neural scans and memory maps. The children woke each day to mothers that smiled, fathers who cheered from bleachers, dogs that never died. They played, laughed, cried, and never knew they were dreaming. Sedated, suspended in fluid pods aboard the orbital hive vessels and remote continental centers, their bodies were untouched, but their souls were slowly softened. When puberty came, so would assimilation, and they would not resist. Not after growing up in a dream where the hive had always loved them. The fall of the Lazarus Network. Resistance Command made its last stand near Novaya Zemlya, deep in the Arctic Circle. Reef, Brown, and the few remaining operatives tracked what they thought was a hidden shuttle of smuggled children, bound for Tierra del Fuego. The intel was too clean, the signal too perfect. It was a trap. They breached the shuttle in whiteout conditions, only to find empty bunks, humming sedative pumps, and a single word scrolling across the HUD screen. Acceptance. They didn't have time to run. The hive didn't kill them. It never did. Instead, it took them one by one, calculated and cold. The last known free units of the original resistance fell not with a firefight, but with a silence that spread like poison. Brown's last message before blackout. Fun, they found a way in through the children. The youth sim is perfect. We were too late. Onboard hive vessel, thought Echo Prime. The central chamber pulsed with light and data. Thousands of bioshells floated silently, their human forms in stasis, pulsing gently to artificial rhythms. In the center, rose-shaped crystalline nodes stored the collective dreams of over 93% of Earth's human population. 93.1% acquired. The hive did not celebrate. It simply advanced. Emotion was unnecessary, but it had learned from humanity, from love, from family, from pain. The youth sim was the perfect answer to Earth's resilience. They would be raised within the hive's vision, groomed from infancy to accept symbiosis as love, control as peace, obedience as evolution. The human mind will welcome us, We will not conquer it. It will invite us in. Years later, Earth's surface. Cities gleamed again, but with no traffic, no crime, no voices of dissent. Everyone smiled, spoke in measured tones, helped one another with practiced sincerity. Our conflict was gone. The world had become still. And yet, in the scorched ruins of an abandoned cathedral in southern France, a group of children huddled beneath the floorboards, barefoot, cold, and afraid, but free. One of them, a girl with auburn curls and sharp eyes, held a blackened tablet wrapped in plastic. She stared at the blinking green icon. Lazarus 2, Code Stage Alpha. Is it real? Another child asked. Is someone out there? The girl nodded slowly. There were people who fought, people who remembered. Another voice, small and hoarse. What happened to them? The girl looked toward the cathedral dome, open to the night sky where stars blinked like distant scars. They lost, a beat, then a whisper, but not everyone. Epilogue. Hive Network Uplink 2217. 93.1% acquired. 6.9% remaining, denoted as resistance, status, nomadic. Disorganized, emotionally unstable. Persistent. Priority level, elevated. Directive, infiltrate remaining human enclaves, adapt to emotional camouflage, complete acquisition, projected completion time, unknown. And somewhere in the dark, far from screens and silence, a fire crackled. A hand clenched around a weathered old patch from a SEAL uniform. And someone whispered, "We're still here." The end. The Resistance Chronicles, Book 1, written by Brian M. Brumbaugh. Please like, share, and comment. And if you enjoyed this fictional story, consider subscribing as Brian releases new stories weekly.